the courtroom of public opinion where culture meets the Constitution. And we don't just read the law, we read it for filth when it deserves it. I'm your host, Jay, and this week we are coming in hot. This week on Issues on the Docket, we're not going to ease in gently here, okay? There's a lot of stuff to cover and so very precious time. We're going to take a hard look at who gets punished for poverty, who gets erased by policy, and who might lose access to the courts altogether. From the criminalization of homelessness to federal protections stripped from LGBTQ plus students to a legal Hail Mary to suspend habeas corpus, this is an abstract. This is the slow rewriting of what justice even means. Let's get into the facts before they're spun into fiction. So for our first story, we're going to talk about the Supreme Court and the criminalization of homelessness case that's really making waves. Grants Pass v. Johnson. Now, with some great reporting from Reuters as well as the SCOTUS blog, the issue really started to develop here of, can cities fine, arrest, or otherwise punish unhoused individuals for sleeping outdoors, even when no shelter is available? The U.S. Supreme Court is set to decide that very question in Grants Pass v. Johnson, a case that could drastically reshape how cities manage homelessness across the country. Now, for a little bit of context, the case stems from the city of Grants Pass, Oregon, where local ordinances prohibit sleeping or camping on public property, even in situations where there are no open shelter beds. Unhoused residents were fined and cited repeatedly, ranging upwards of $200 per citation. $200 per citation for an unhoused person. Do we really think those people have that? The answer, no. Otherwise, they wouldn't be unhoused. A federal appeals court ruled this practice violates the Eighth Amendment's ban on cruel and unusual punishment. The city, of course, appealed, claiming the ruling ties their hands when it comes to public safety and cleanliness. So really, the city is more so about the image. That's what it's giving for me right now. But let's continue. At the heart of this case is a constitutional question. Is it a form of cruel and unusual punishment to fine or arrest someone simply for existing, sleeping, resting when they have nowhere else to go? The ruling will set a national precedent. If the court sides with Grants Pass, cities across the United States will have freer reign to criminalize homelessness. If it sides with the plaintiffs, it could force municipalities to address the housing crisis with actual solutions, not just citations and displacement. There is a little connection here that I do want to bring up, and it involves the state of California. Here in California, the stakes are pretty high. As of January 2024, the state had over 187,000 people experiencing homelessness, accounting for about 30% of the nation's homeless population. Approximately 2/3 of these individuals are unsheltered, living on the streets, in encampments, or in vehicles. Major cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego are grappling with visible encampments and public pressure to act. Now, in response to the crisis, Governor Gavin Newsom has urged cities and counties to ban homelessness and ban homeless encampments by adopting a new statewide blueprint. This initiative includes over $3 billion in state grants aimed at treating mental health and substance abuse disorders, very, very important, while also proposing a model ordinance to address encampments. However, critics argue that such measures may worsen conditions for the homeless and stress the need for long-term housing solutions and sustained funding. Valid point. So when we look at the big picture of this case, the Grants Pass case, it's not just about what's going on there in Grants Pass. It's about how we as a nation decide to treat the most vulnerable among us. If the Supreme Court greenlights criminalizing homelessness, cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and others could have legal cover to push people out of sight instead of pulling them into support. It's a ruling that could ripple across every city council and police department in the country. So ask yourself, do we solve systemic failure with jail time or with justice, dignity, and real investment in human lives? Because how we treat unhoused people, it says more about us than it ever will about them. So we've seen how surviving while unhoused could soon become a ticket to a jail instead of a pathway to a shelter. But what happens when being yourself, your full, valid self, is treated like a disruption? Let's talk about the court ruling that just told LGBTQ students their protections were a little too inconvenient. Now, our next story involves the federal courts blocking LGBTQ Title IX protections. Due to some great reporting at The Guardian as well as NPR, which shout out if you are not supporting your NPR stations, please do so, especially with this administration completely disheveling public radio, okay? I am a subscriber, so I am saying that as someone, and this is no sponsored ad, anything, it's just me saying, please support local radio and independent journalism because y'all, this is where I can also get the facts just like you, okay? Okay, now back to the actual story here. So, a federal court has struck down the Biden administration's expanded interpretation of Title IX, one that was supposed to protect LGBTQ plus students in schools and colleges. This rollback not only undercuts a key civil rights safeguard, it sends a chilling message. Identity is negotiable. Safety, selective. Be alert, folks. Title IX has long prohibited sex-based discrimination in education, but what sex, quote unquote, means has evolved over time. Following the 2020 Supreme Court decision in Bostock v. Clayton County, which extended workplace protections to LGBTQ people, the Biden administration followed suit in education. The Department of Education issued guidance that Title IX should also cover sexual orientation and gender identity. That guidance meant students could file complaints if they were misgendered by staff, denied access to bathrooms, excluded from sports teams, or targeted with anti-LGBTQ bullying. It was a big step. And for many young queer and trans students, especially in red states, it was the only thing standing between them and outright discrimination. Legally speaking, 13 Republican-led states sued, claiming that the rule was illegal, ideologically driven, and unworkable. Now, this court, the federal court, they agreed, ruling that the Department of Education exceeded its authority. And in doing so, it slammed the brakes on the guidance and created a legal divide. LGBTQ students in one state may be protected, while students across state lines are left with nothing. This, my friends, is judicial whiplash with real consequences. Schools are confused. Students are vulnerable. And here we are, with the federal government's ability to ensure equal treatment being overlooked. It's being chipped away, one injunction at a time. So, my thought on this particular situation, because it does affect people within my own community. Let's not pretend that this was a good faith disagreement about statutory language. This was a power grab dressed up in legal robes. The court said, "We hear your identity, but we don't recognize it here." And the fallout, you may ask? It's not theoretical. Kids are being told by the law that they do not deserve protection, that their gender is a debate, that their safety is up for negotiation. In a country where LGBTQ students and youth all over already face disproportionate rates of bullying, depression, and suicide. This isn't just policy. It's quite literally life or death. Now, if the law protects you only in certain zip codes, is it really a right? When our legal system can grant and revoke personhood based on political wins, we're not just debating civil rights. We're admitting that they were never truly secured in the first place. This moment demands more than empathy and allyship. It demands legal resolve, because every inch we lose in protections costs someone else a mile in dignity, safety, and survival. Okay, so we've gone from erasing identity to erasing rights, and now we're talking about erasing one of the oldest legal protections in existence. Because the Trump administration is currently flirting with the nuclear option: suspending habeas corpus. Yes, for real, y'all. And the implications stretch way past immigration. So with this particular story, the Trump administration is currently weighing suspending habeas corpus for migrants. That's what they say. Due to some good reporting over from The New Yorker, Vanity Fair, as well as AP News, the Trump administration is seemingly choosing violence here by considering a radical legal maneuver, suspending the constitutional right of habeas corpus, specifically for migrants. Yes, the same habeas corpus that dates back to the Magna Carta. The one that says no government can detain a person without giving them the chance to appear before a judge. If you've never heard of the Magna Carta, pull over for a second. I'll be here. I need you to do some Googling. Get your knowledge up. This move is part of an aggressive immigration crackdown being prepped for a potential second Trump term, which really would be a third term if this administration defies the Constitution and all of the established political customs, courtesies, and laws. Led by hardliners like Stephen Miller, the proposal treats border crossings not as an administrative issue, but as an invasion. And that word matters because under Article 1, Section 9 of the United States Constitution, habeas corpus can only be suspended during rebellion or, you guessed it, invasion. So, they're laying the groundwork to argue this is an invasion, which, if it is, that means the normal rules, including due process, completely go out the window. You should be alarmed. I'm telling you, be alarmed. Let's be clear. Only Congress has the constitutional authority to suspend habeas corpus. The executive branch cannot do it unilaterally, no matter how urgent the political optics. Legal scholars across the spectrum, conservative, liberal, nonpartisan, are all warning that this would be a historic overreach. And the implications? Unchecked detention, zero court oversight, migrants, including children and asylum seekers, all held for weeks or months with no legal recourse. This isn't about migrants solely. This isn't about border security. This is about authoritarian creep, an establishment of authoritarian policies, rules, and oversight that will keep many communities oppressed. If you can label a group as a threat and suspend their rights, what stops you from doing it to protesters, to journalists, to political opponents? Habeas corpus is one of the bedrock protections of any free society. If the government can hold you without trial, without explanation, without oversight, then the Constitution itself is just a prop. And I dare say, the Constitution is not a prop. Ask yourself this: what happens when rights become conditional? When a president can declare an invasion and suddenly a whole entire class of people no longer has access to the courts? My friends, we're not talking about hypotheticals. We're talking about the legal scaffolding of authoritarianism being erected in real time right before us. And if you think this stops with migrants, you are more foolish than I thought. You're not paying attention. It's not just about the border. It's about the boundary that currently exists and is currently eroding between freedom and fear. Y'all, the stories I mentioned, these aren't just isolated rulings or policy tweaks. This is a coordinated, calculated recalibration of power. Who holds it, who loses it, and who gets locked out of it entirely. From the sidewalk to the school hallway to the courtroom itself, the law is being tested. And spoiler alert, if we do not push back, a lot of people are going to find themselves on the wrong side of a very shifting line. Let's take a quick break, and then I'll be back with our good segment Precedent Pending, where, my God, we have a lot to unpack. Hey y'all, welcome back to Overruled. This is Precedent Pending, where we track the cases that haven't just made headlines. They're out here reshaping the rule book. And this week, baby, we're staring directly into the distorted mirror of modern policing, where artificial intelligence, racial bias, and unchecked surveillance collide. Now, y'all have been asking me to give deeper dives. Buckle up. Today, we getting in there. We digging real deep, okay? We are going deep and we get no sleep. Well, I got no sleep. Today's case doesn't come out of Washington. It comes from Detroit, from the living room of a Black mother, from the trauma of an arrest that never should have happened, from a computer system that told police, "This is your suspect," and a system that never stopped to ask, what if the computer got it wrong? We're talking about Portia Woodruff, the first Black woman known to be wrongfully arrested because of facial recognition technology. And this isn't just a lawsuit. It's a line in the sand about what justice looks like in the age of AI. So today, we're going to deep dive into Portia Woodruff v. Detroit Police Department. Facial recognition is officially on trial. So, let's set the scene here. On a cold morning in Detroit in February 2023, 32-year-old Portia Woodruff was at home getting her two young daughters ready for school. Seems normal, right? But then, 6 police officers knocked on her door with an arrest warrant. 8 months pregnant at the time, by the way, Portia was stunned. The officers told her she was being arrested for robbery and carjacking, charges that seemed impossible given her condition. She initially thought, oh, you gotta be joking. This is clearly a mistake. Are you kidding? Carjacking? Do you see that I am 8 months pregnant? She exclaimed in disbelief, protesting that she couldn't possibly have sprinted through a violent carjacking in her state. But it was no joke, folks. The officers handcuffed Portia and placed her under arrest as her children looked on. Talk about trauma. Portia's 2 daughters, ages 6 and 12, watched in terror as their mother was frisked and led away. Mommy's going to jail, they said. They exclaimed, trying to stay calm and understand what the hell is happening. At the Detroit Detention Center, Portia was held for 11 hours of interrogation about a crime she knew absolutely nothing about. Officers seized her iPhone to scour it for evidence. Jail staff refused her food and water during the ordeal, despite her pregnancy. Let's remind everyone of that. Only after posting a $100,000 personal bond was Portia released from custody. She went straight to the hospital, where doctors diagnosed her with dehydration and hooked her up to IV fluids. In the subsequent weeks that followed, it became increasingly clear that Portia was entirely innocent. About a month later, the Wayne County prosecutor dropped all charges against her, citing insufficient evidence. Surprise, surprise. Portia's nightmare should never have happened. And the reason it happened is now at the center of her lawsuit. A faulty facial recognition match put her in the frame for a crime she didn't commit. I bet you didn't know AI was doing all that, huh? The trigger for Portia Woodruff's arrest was an unreliable algorithm. According to Detroit police records, the investigation of the January 2023 carjacking led a detective to run surveillance footage of a female suspect through a facial recognition system, seeking a match in their database. This is a very common tactic. The software used, a system from a company called DataWorks Plus, scanned against a repository of mugshots and license photos and spat out a hit. It identified Portia Woodruff from a 2015 mugshot from a minor traffic-related arrest years prior as a likely match to the suspect in the video. Now, in reality, the algorithm got it wrong. But police took its suggestion at face value. Investigators put Portia's old mugshot into a photo lineup array alongside several filler photos and showed it to the carjacking victim. Not surprisingly, the victim picked out Portia's picture, mistaking her for the criminal. In essence, the facial recognition system had produced a digital doppelganger, and the flawed lineup sealed the misidentification. Crucially, the officers failed to notice obvious red flags before rushing to make an arrest. The surveillance footage, for instance. That footage that was software analyzed never indicated the female suspect was pregnant. Yet Portia was visibly 8 months pregnant at the time of the crime. This glaring discrepancy should have given investigators pause, but no, it didn't. Detroit Police Chief James White later acknowledged that the investigation breached protocol. In a press conference, Chief White explained that facial recognition matches are only supposed to be used as leads, and including a match image in a lineup without further vetting can, quote, taint the photo lineup. So y'all knew this wasn't right, but you proceeded anyway. All right. The department's policy? It warns not to use photos that so closely resemble the suspect that a witness might just pick the look alike. And that's exactly what happened here. In Portia's case, the technology's error was compounded by human error. As Chief White put it, the detective's failure to dot the I's and cross the T's led to a misleading lineup and a wrongful arrest. You don't say. In other words, a faulty face recognition hit added with a flawed lineup equals one innocent woman wrongly accused. Are we surprised, America? No, we are not. Portia Woodruff's lawsuit against the Detroit Police Department, or DPD, raises profound legal and constitutional issues about the use of facial recognition in policing. At its core, the case is about the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable searches and seizures, and what counts as probable cause for an arrest. Here, the only evidence implicating Portia was the facial recognition match and the very shaky eyewitness identification that flowed from it. Is that enough to justify an arrest warrant? No. Portia's attorneys and civil rights advocates argue emphatically no. Neither an algorithm say-so nor an identification that resulted from that algorithm's suggestion can establish the reliable probable cause that the Fourth Amendment requires. And the Fourth Amendment, mind you, predates facial recognition software. In their view, DPD officers violated Portia's Fourth Amendment rights by arresting her on such a meager, untrustworthy basis. Another issue being raised is due process and the fundamental fairness of how the identification was conducted. In criminal procedure, there's a long history of courts warning against impermissibly suggestive lineup techniques, which can lead witnesses to misidentify innocent people. Portia's case presents a 21st century twist on that problem. Police used a computer-generated photo, the top face recognition hit that they got in a lineup, essentially presenting the witness with an AI-selected suspect. Y'all, that practice is arguably inherently suggestive. The lineup was skewed towards the algorithm's choice. The ACLU, supporting Portia, noted that when a facial recognition system picks an innocent lookalike and police then show that lookalike to a witness, it all but guarantees the witness will pick the wrong person. Here, the witness picked Portia precisely because the software had erroneously flagged her. This raises a due process concern. Portia was deprived of her liberty based off of an unreliable and unfair identification procedure, which calls into question the constitutionality of using such methods in the first place. The case also highlights potential equal protection issues under the 14th Amendment and broader civil rights concerns. It has not escaped notice that every person known to have been wrongfully arrested due to police facial recognition in the US has been, you guessed it, Black. Portia Woodruff is Black. And in fact, she is the first Black woman to come forward as a facial recognition false arrest victim. This pattern suggests that the technology may be disproportionately harming people of color, which raises questions of racial bias and discrimination. If law enforcement uses a tool that is known to misidentify Black individuals at higher rates, could that practice be a form of systemic racial bias in violation of equal protection? Portia's complaint doesn't explicitly invoke equal protection in the same way a deliberate racial profiling case might, but the racial disparities are impossible to ignore. Notably, in a related case, Robert Williams, one of the black men wrongfully arrested in Detroit, sued the city not only for Fourth Amendment violations, but also under Michigan's civil rights law, arguing that the flawed use of face recognition amounted to racial discrimination. Portia's case similarly forces a confrontation with how biased technology can lead to biased outcomes. Simple concept. In essence, her ordeal suggests that if a policing tool disproportionately targets Black people, it might run afoul of the principle of equal protections under the law. Portia Woodruff's story is a stark illustration of a now well-documented fact. Facial recognition technology is not colorblind. In study after study, researchers have found that these algorithms perform unevenly across different demographics, with particularly poor accuracy for, wait for it, women, people with darker skin, and younger individuals. In other words, a Black woman like Portia is more likely to be misidentified by face recognition than, say, a white male suspect. A 2019 federal study done by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, found that many facial recognition systems were 10 to 100 times more likely to produce false matches for Black and Asian faces compared to white faces. Other research, such as the well-known gender shade study, highlighted that Black women were the most misidentified group of all. Some commercial algorithms had error rates of over 30% for dark-skinned female faces, while performing almost flawlessly for white men. These bias issues stem from how AI models are trained, often with disproportionately white, male datasets, and from inherent societal biases that creep into tech design. For the Black community, these technical biases have real-world consequences. By mid-2023, 6 people in the United States, including Portia, had been falsely arrested based on facial recognition matches, and every single one of them was Black. Sorry for those listening that want to be counter to the point here, but this is not a coincidence, but rather evidence of who this technology tends to misidentify. By 2024, the count of known wrongful arrests had grown to at least 7 cases nationwide, again, all involving Black or brown individuals. Portia Woodruff's case broke new ground only in that she is the first female to join this unfortunate club. The others, Robert Williams, Michael Oliver, Najir Parks, and so on, have all been Black men. The pattern of false arrests reads like a pattern of racial bias, even if it is unintended. It shows that Black Americans are shouldering the risks of this technology. Each false arrest is not just a fluke, but a symptom of a broader issue. Facial recognition is much less reliable when used on Black faces. Yet, police departments have deployed it widely in Black communities. Detroit, for instance, is a prime example. The city's population is about 80% Black, and its police department has been an enthusiastic adopter of facial recognition. DPD runs about 125 facial recognition searches per year, and tellingly, those searches are almost entirely run on photos of Black men, often pulled from the city's network of surveillance cameras. This means, in essence, Detroit's Black residents face a higher likelihood of being subjected to a false algorithmic match. Portia Woodruff herself was in the police database because of a past incident of driving with an expired license, a minor matter. Yet that very mugshot was enough to land her in a high-stakes criminal lineup years later. The intersection of heavy surveillance and biased tech, it creates a dangerous situation, y'all. Communities of color, already over-policed historically, are now more likely to be falsely flagged by computer systems. This has been described as a double bind for Black Americans, both over-surveilled and misidentified. Portia's experience has become a rallying point in highlighting that Black women, in particular, are at great risk. They exist at the crossroads of racial bias. The system sees a Black face and errs, and gender bias. The system also struggles with female faces. Her case underlines the call from experts for greater caution or outright halts in using these tools until the basis can be fixed, if they can be fixed at all. Portia's ordeal was not an isolated incident, but part of a troubling pattern of wrongful arrests linked to facial recognition technology. Detroit, in particular, has seen multiple cases. Woodruff's arrest was the third known false arrest incident in Detroit caused by facial recognition in just a few years. Prior to her, 2 Black men, Robert Williams and Michael Oliver, had similar experiences with Detroit police. Let's talk really briefly on them. Now, as for Robert Williams, in January of 2020, Williams was arrested in front of his wife and daughters at his suburban Detroit home after DPD misidentified him as a shoplifting suspect. The police, they had used facial recognition on grainy security footage from a store theft. The system pointed to Williams, and he was picked up. He ended up locked in jail for 30 hours, forced to sleep on a hard concrete floor, before detectives eventually realized the software had gotten it wrong. The real thief and Williams looked somewhat alike, but Williams had an outright alibi. He was actually out of state at the time of the crime. His case was so egregious that the Wayne County prosecutor publicly apologized to him. Williams later sued Detroit, and his lawsuit became a catalyst for policy changes. More on that in a few. Now, for Michael Oliver, in a separate 2019 incident, Detroit's face recognition system mistakenly identified Michael Oliver as the perpetrator of a crime. Reportedly, the theft of a teacher's cell phone. Oliver, like Williams, was a Black man who suddenly found himself in handcuffs for doing something he did not do. He was falsely accused and arrested because a computer thought his face matched the suspect's face on video. Oliver also filed a lawsuit against the city for the wrongful arrest. Outside of Detroit, similar cases have surfaced across the country. In New Jersey, Najir Parks spent 10 days in jail in 2019 after police in Woodbridge Township wrongfully identified him via facial recognition as a suspect in a theft. Parks had to fight the charges and was eventually cleared when it became obvious the tech was wrong. He too has since sued for the violation of his rights. In the Washington, D.C., Maryland area, Alonzo Sawyer was misidentified as the assailant in a 2018 assault on a bus driver, despite clear differences in appearance and an alibi. He was arrested and jailed for over a week because an analyst confirmed, quote unquote, the faulty face recognition match. And in 2022, Randall Reed, a Black man in Georgia, was arrested on a warrant out of Louisiana for a crime he didn't commit. Again, the result of a facial recognition error. See the trend here, folks? Reed was freed only after authorities realized the algorithm had flagged the wrong person. Reed's face was mistakenly matched to a suspect's, despite Reed being 40 pounds lighter than the suspect. Guys, I can't make this up. This is a very scary situation. Each of these individuals has a story with the same DNA. I was innocent, but face recognition pointed at me, and I got arrested. Civil liberties groups, like the ACLU, believe there are many, many more wrongful arrests that we don't even know about. As one advocate noted, for every publicized case like Portia's or Williams's, there may be dozens of Americans wrongly accused by face recognition who never got justice or never even see a headline. It often takes someone persistently proclaiming their innocence and finding a lawyer or media attention to bring these mistakes to light. Portia Woodruff's case, coming after a string of similar false arrests, has added urgency to calls for reform, and I agree. It showed that even an obviously pregnant woman wasn't spared from the dragnet of an overzealous, tech-driven investigation. If it could happen to her, many ask, who else could it happen to? My answer, each and every one of us. Now, moving to where we are now with the case, after clearing her name, Portia Woodruff turned to the courts to seek accountability. In August 2023, she filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city of Detroit, the Detroit Police Department, and the officers involved, alleging wrongful arrest and violations of her constitutional rights. The case, formerly known as Portia Woodruff v. City of Detroit et al., meaning and others, is being heard in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan. As of now, as of mid-2025, the lawsuit is ongoing. Portia is represented by attorneys, including Ivan Land, a local civil rights lawyer, and her suit seeks monetary damages for her ordeal, as well as changes in police practices. The ACLU of Michigan, as well as other advocacy groups, have taken keen interest, filing an amicus curiae, friend of the court brief, supporting Portia's arguments and highlighting the broader issues at stake. The Detroit Police Department's leadership, meanwhile, has somewhat acknowledged mistakes, while also defending the technology, over human beings. Police Chief James White has been careful to say that the fault lay in poor investigative work, not solely in the facial recognition software itself. Even though the facial recognition software is what caused this misidentification to occur in the first place. But I digress. Essentially, DPD's position is that facial recognition was just a lead, and that if the detectives had done their job properly, i.e. double-checking the suspect's identity, following lineup protocols, simply doing their job as investigators, Portia would not have been arrested in the first place. Chief White noted that the detective on Portia's case violated the department's eyewitness identification and lineup policy, resulting in the wrongful arrest. He stated that moving forward, DPD is reinforcing training and oversight to ensure that no one is arrested on the basis of facial recognition alone. Now, sound off in the comments if you think that's really what's going to happen, or if that was just filler because they have to say something politically correct. Indeed, in direct response to Portia's case and the others before it, the city of Detroit adopted new rules in mid-2023 to curb the use of facial recognition, not halt it. These reforms came as part of settlements and public pressure. Notably, when Robert Williams settled his lawsuit, Detroit agreed to a set of policy changes. Now, DPD officers are prohibited from using a facial recognition match as the sole evidence to make an arrest. In practice, this means if the software suggests a suspect, police must find additional independent evidence linking that person to the crime before they can even think of an arrest warrant. Detroit also banned the practice of using facial recognition results to generate photo lineups, unless there is other corroboration. In other words, no more lineups that include only an AI-picked look-alike suspect without further evidence. The department implemented checks like requiring a supervisor to sign off that a suspect identified by the algorithm actually fits the known details of the crime. For example, is this suspect physically capable of having done this? A policy meant to catch blunders like accusing a pregnant woman of a foot chase. They also now require that a different detective, not involved in the case, conduct the lineup presentation to a witness if an image from facial recognition is used. This added layer is supposed to provide a more neutral evaluation and avoid confirmation bias. These changes in Detroit, they're considered some of the strictest facial recognition rules in the country, short of an outright ban. The city went from having virtually no specific safeguards to enacting policies that civil rights advocates had been recommending for years. It's a bittersweet outcome. On one hand, Portia Woodruff's experience directly contributed to reforms that might protect others. On the other hand, those reforms came only after multiple innocent people suffered. As for Portia's personal case, it continues to wind its way through the legal system. The city has indicated it will defend the officers' actions in court, potentially arguing they had qualified immunity or that they didn't knowingly violate her rights. Now, the ACLU's December 2024 amicus brief in Woodruff v. Oliver in this instance is one of the detectives, argues vigorously that what happened to Portia was unconstitutional and that the court should make clear that unverified face recognition hits cannot be used as probable cause. The outcome remains to be seen. As of now, no settlement has been announced, and the case is likely heading toward either a trial or a pretrial ruling. All eyes are on this case because it could set a legal precedent for how far police can go in using these AI tools. And also whether mistakes like this are considered violations of the Fourth Amendment. In the meantime, Portia Woodruff has become a vocal advocate, determined to ensure this doesn't happen to someone else. Portia Woodruff's case carries huge cultural and social significance. It sits at the crossroads of racial justice, privacy, and the growing debate over AI in law enforcement. For many, Portia's story put a human face on the abstract idea of algorithmic bias. It's one thing to say an algorithm can be biased. It's another thing to see a pregnant Black mother wrongfully hauled off to jail because a computer, and the police trusting that computer, said she looked like a criminal. This case has thus become a flashpoint in conversations about surveillance, technology, and civil liberties. Community activists in Detroit and beyond point to Portia's experience when arguing that high-tech policing can replicate the same old biases of traditional policing, unless we are very careful. The image of Portia, a Black woman who was just living her life, being victimized by a misfiring AI system, has resonated deeply especially in Black communities that have historically borne the brunt of over-policing and misidentification. It underscores a painful irony. The very communities that face disproportionate surveillance are also the ones most likely to be misidentified by surveillance technology. The case has also fueled a push for greater accountability and regulation of facial recognition. After Portia's story became public, there were renewed calls in Detroit and in cities nationwide to reassess whether police should be using this technology at all. Civil rights organizations like the ACLU, they argue that no amount of internal policy is enough. They advocate for moratoriums or outright bans on facial recognition for law enforcement until it can be proven safe and bias-free. The only policy that will prevent false facial recognition arrests is a complete ban, said Albert Fox Kahn, a prominent activist with the Surveillance Technology Oversight Project, reacting to Woodruff's case. Advocates warn that for every known wrongful arrest, like Portia's, there are likely many that never make the news. People who might still be facing charges or who had their lives upended without public scrutiny. They call the systems racist, error-prone, and argue such tools have no place in a just society. This strong language reflects a broader tech justice movement that is skeptical of allowing algorithms to make life and death decisions in policing, especially when those algorithms disproportionately harm marginalized groups. In the wake of cases like Portia's, some jurisdictions have taken preventative measures. San Francisco, Boston, and at least 15 other cities in the US have passed laws banning police use of facial recognition altogether, citing the potential for wrongful arrests and civil rights violations. States like New Jersey have considered statewide policies or freezes on the technology pending further review. At the federal level, members of Congress have raised concerns about federal agencies' use of facial recognition and have introduced, though not yet passed, bills to limit it. The cultural conversation is shifting, where police once touted facial recognition as a cutting-edge crime-fighting tool. Now even some law enforcement leaders acknowledge its pitfalls and the need for strict limits. The Detroit police, for instance, now have some of the tightest rules in the country on facial recognition use, a direct result of the public pressure and legal fallout from cases like Woodruff's and Williams. Ultimately, Portia Woodruff's case matters because it encapsulates the promise and peril of new technology in the justice system. It asks us as a society, how much should we let machines inform or decide whom to suspect or arrest? And when those machines make a mistake, who is held accountable? Portia's experience also reinforces the importance of constitutional safeguards in the face of new technology. The Fourth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, these aren't antiquated ideas. They are living protections that need to be reasserted in modern contexts. If Portia wins her case, it could set a precedent that reinforces the primacy of human judgment and probable cause over a machine's output. It could send a message to police departments nationwide that dragnet surveillance tactics and blind faith in algorithms will not stand up in court. From a cultural standpoint, Portia Woodruff has become something of a symbol in the fight against unregulated surveillance tech. Like the cases of the Central Park Five or others wrongfully accused in the past, her story triggers a visceral reaction. It shines a light on injustices that are easy to overlook unless they happen to you or someone you know. People are discussing facial recognition at dinner tables and in barbershops, questioning its use because of cases like this. In an era When debates about AI ethics are often theoretical, Portia's ordeal is a real-world cautionary tale. It reminds everyone that behind every data point or facial recognition match is a real person who could suffer. As y'all in my podcast audience would appreciate, this case isn't just a one-off legal dispute. It's a civil rights battle for the digital age. One that will help define how far we are willing to let technology intrude into our lives at the expense of our fundamental freedoms. Portia Woodruff's fight for justice is still underway, but it has already sparked change and awareness. It challenges us to ensure that in the pursuit of safer communities, we don't sacrifice the very values, fairness, equality, and due process that keep our communities free. The outcome of Portia Woodruff v. Detroit Police will have ripple effects in policing, law, and technology. In the meantime, her story stands as a powerful warning. When it comes to new surveillance tools, we must remember that progress is not truly progress if it tramples on civil rights. And as Portia herself has noted, she's speaking out so that someone else doesn't have to endure what she did, so that the tools meant to protect us don't end up turning innocent people into victims. Here's the part that we can't forget, y'all. Every time a new surveillance tool enters the system, it comes with promises, efficiency, objectivity, progress. But if the people it harms are the same ones already over-policed, overcharged, and overlooked, then it's not justice. It's just automation of the same old bias. Portia Woodruff, she didn't get to sign up to be a test case. She was just a mom getting her kids ready for school. And a machine, backed by human error, nearly derailed her life. This case is about more than one arrest. It's about how easily a digital profile becomes a prison sentence when accountability doesn't keep up with innovation. And if we don't draw a line now, these machines won't just keep scanning faces. They'll keep scanning past our rights. Because rights, as we see in this particular context, rights aren't real if they glitch the moment a Black woman walks into the frame. We'll take a quick break, because that was a lot, y'all. But I hope you enjoyed it, like I enjoyed sharing it with you. We're gonna take a break, get some water, shake that for a second. Do whatever you gotta do, grab your snack, and then meet me back here where we'll turn it up a little lighter with our third segment, Cite Me, Don't Fight Me. Okay, y'all, it's time for Cite Me, Don't Fight Me, the part of the show where I share a few real, honest-to-law book statutes that make you say, ain't no way. But oh baby, there is a way. Let's get into it. Let's go ahead and jump in with our first law. In Alabama, thou shalt not giggle in church. The statute itself says that it is illegal in Alabama to wear a fake mustache in church if it causes laughter. That's the kicker there, y'all. It's the laughter part. Not just for aesthetics, but it needs to be funny, and that's illegal. What? Apparently, church is for solemn reflection, not for Cousin Greg's Dollar Tree disguise. This law is old school Southern respectability politics wrapped in Sunday's best. But it's also a reminder of how law and religion have historically held hands a little too tightly. You know that separation of church and state thing? Yeah. Also, what exactly is the enforcement procedure here? What happens? We caught you on the pew in a Party City stash during praise and worship. Lock 'em up. You're under arrest. Okay. Ain't nobody got time for that. Next up, we're going up to Alaska, where you should not whisper to the moose hunter. The statute itself, in Alaska, it is illegal to whisper in someone's ear while they're moose hunting. First of all, okay, there's a couple things here. This is one of the things where I feel confident in saying to my Black audience, we ain't gonna be out there talking to no animals, whispering in no cold sub-zero weather, trying to hunt a moose in the first place. But we'll entertain this law because clearly it's one that's on the books. Listen, Alaska takes its moose seriously. This law was probably meant to prevent distractions that could cause dangerous accident. But also, who was out there whispering sweet nothings to someone during a moose stalk? The moose is 7 feet tall. It does not need background ASMR. Still, this law is a great example of how state codes can reflect hyper-local realities, even when they sound completely absurd to outsiders. To each their own, I guess. It ain't gonna affect me. And in our last one, we're gonna jump over to Oregon. Now, this is where you have to close the door or you catch a charge, right? Let me give you more context. The statute says that in Oregon, it is illegal to leave your car door open longer than is deemed necessary. Does anyone see an issue with that? Because I do. What's necessary, you ask? No one knows. This is one of those laws that gives vibes-based law enforcement. Are you unloading groceries? Cool, okay, yeah, you leave the door open. Are you just hanging out with the door open? Like just chilling with your homies? Jail. That is perspective. And really, let's be real about this. This is the most Pacific Northwest law imaginable. We respect boundaries, wildlife, and sealed temperature control. I need you to close your Subaru. It's all jokes. It's all jokes. But it does track. It's very PNW. So whether you're committing crimes in cosplay, whispering at wildlife, or loitering with your favorite Lyft driver and the door is open, somewhere out there, a local ordinance is ready to collect you and your coins and issue you a very stupid citation. Let's take a quick break, and then we're gonna wrap up with our last segment. You already know what it is. All right, y'all, welcome back. We reached that part of the show. You know, my part. This is where I get to give my two-piece. This is where, I stop giving the polished commentary that you have come to know and love at this point, and I just get to say it with my chest. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, this is objection, Your Honor. And this week's objection, silence. I don't know how you're feeling out there, but I'll speak for myself when I say this. In this day and age, silence has stopped being neutral. It really has shifted. It's no longer a pause. It's a posture. One that too often bends toward complicity. We're taught to stay quiet, sometimes directly, sometimes in subtle, suffocating ways. Be respectful. Don't make a scene. Don't question authority. Don't get too passionate. Don't shake the table, as we would say. Even when the table is built on injustice, we're still told to just sit there and color. Even when silence comes at the cost of your dignity, your autonomy, your entire identity. And here's the real kicker. These messages aren't just coming from the margins of society. They're coming from the top down, from our workplaces, from our police departments, from our elected leaders, from the very policymakers that should be speaking up for the people. And instead, they're pushing a status quo that asks us to sit down, shut up, and smile while we're actively being stripped of our rights. Now, for a long time, I did just that. I kept the peace at my own expense. I was raised in a family where keeping quiet was considered strength, where processing in silence was safer than confronting out loud. And so I learned early how to bottle my feelings, how to bite my tongue, how to excuse the inexcusable for the sake of harmony. And if I'm being honest, that survival strategy followed me into adulthood. I became a cerebral, introspective, conflict-averse version of myself. One who mastered the art of shrinking in the name of keeping things calm. But breaking news, y'all. Living in that space, it is not sustainable. It's not healthy, and it sure as hell doesn't serve justice. The truth is, we're living in a moment where speaking up has never been more important. The freedom to exist, to love who we love, to access education, healthcare, a safe place to live, the right to choose, the right to breathe. It's all under siege. And every time we let that go unchallenged, we're not just being quiet. We are becoming complicit. Now, don't get me wrong. Before you come for me, I'm not telling you to go out and pick fights just for the sake of making noise. All right? What I am saying is that if something is wrong, if something or someone is being harmed, if a community is being erased, silence should not be your final answer. Speak up. Push back. Ask the uncomfortable questions. Because the most powerful revolutions, they didn't start with shouting. They started with truth, with clarity, with people who dared to say, this isn't okay, and I won't be silent about it. Let me tell you from personal experience, when you finally stop editing yourself for other people's comfort, when you stop rehearsing the version of you that's palatable, and you step into your truth with intention, with facts, and with a desire to make good trouble, you don't just feel seen. You feel free. You feel vindicated. You feel as if there is a power that has enveloped you in a way no degree, no job, no title could ever give you. I know that because therapy helped me rewire that silent little kid I used to be. The one who thought keeping the peace meant keeping your mouth shut. And I hope that in doing this podcast, sharing these stories and these cases, these rants with you every week, helps someone else see themselves in the mirror and ask, how long have I been staying quiet? Because now's the time to change that, y'all. If it's LGBTQ rights, speak up. If it's Black and brown lives, speak up. If it's reproductive freedom, immigrant protections, economic justice, whatever it is, come out of the shadows. Say it with your entire chest. Shake the damn table. Because silence, you're not strength. You're not strategy. You're damn sure not safety. Silence, you are overruled. If you've been holding your tongue, sitting on your hands, or waiting for the right moment to say what needs to be said, let this be your sign. Because if you take anything from this episode, it's that silence isn't the same thing as peace. And it sure as hell isn't justice. Whether it's the Supreme Court greenlighting criminalization, courts rolling back LGBTQ protections, or AI systems mistaking our identities and ruining lives, this is not the time to shrink. This is the time to speak. Loudly, clearly, purposefully. And if you're feeling that fire in your chest right now, good. Use it. Because change doesn't happen when we whisper about what's wrong behind closed doors. It happens when we bring our full selves to the table and refuse to back down. And look, I'm not here to preach, okay? I'm right here with you. We see each other, okay? We see each other. Learning, unlearning, pushing through however we can, week after week, case after case. We on this ride together. Now, if this show is helping you step a little more into your truth, keep riding with me, okay? You can follow Overruled on social media. We're at Overruled Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. On YouTube, our channel is The Overruled Podcast. That's where you'll find behind-the-scenes commentary, upcoming case teasers, and moments that didn't make the cut but definitely deserved airtime. And if this episode hit home for you, please do me a favor. Rate, like, and leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening. Do your big one. It helps this show grow and keeps the conversation going in the places that need it most. This is how we create our seat at the table. We force them to listen. Got a legal oddity, a rant of your own, or a weird law that you want me to roast? Email us at theoverruledpodcast@gmail.com. Seriously, share something nice and we'll talk back. Now, until next time, keep questioning, keep showing up, and most of all, keep speaking your truth, even when your voice shakes, with the facts and your receipts, boo. Bye. Yeah. Bye. Oh, my goodness. The way I've been waiting to drink this sugar-free Red Bull, girl, it's about to be manna from heaven. Oh, that's the one. I needed that because the doll is tired. It's been a long day and I still got other things to do, of course. But anyway, that's just me, sharing a little insight behind the scenes. I like to give y'all a little few seconds or something. All right. I love y'all, and I'll talk to y'all later.